Hello and welcome to Wineskins, a program featuring reflections on the lives of the saints and the sacred scriptures, along with a variety of topics and issues from a Catholic perspective. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda. Our show is sponsored by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts, a division of the Society of St. Paul. On our show today, I will interview Dr. Dermot Quinn, an Irish Catholic in America. We will also hear more about the life of St. Charles Lwanga and his companions, and the readings for this feast of the Most Holy Trinity. That and more on Wineskins. And now I will speak with Matt Abramowski from Villa Maria. Joining me is Matt Abramowski, who is the program director at the Villa Maria Educational and Spirituality Center in Villa Maria, Pennsylvania. Welcome back to Wineskins.
It's good to be with you, Father. Thank you.
Matt, we know that as summer is approaching very quickly, there's lots of programs and opportunities that the Villa provides for people in our area. So give us some of an idea of what some of those programs are.
Be happy to. The sisters have always been committed to supporting youth, and so we're very proud and happy to be having 2 summer camps this year. Our Grow Camp, which is for younger kids, begins in the month of June, and it's a once-a-week camp for children ages 5 to 10. It stands for Growing in Reverence for Ourselves and Our World, and the kids, through activities, learn about reverence and respect. They spend time on the land. Of course, they get to enjoy the swimming pool, which is always a big hit. We also have a camp for teenagers. It's the week of July 9th to the 13th, and that'll be all week. It's an outdoor summer experience where they really get to spend time out on the land and learning some basic things about the land and some important skills as well. In support of our youth programs, on June 2nd, we have our annual Villa Mariathon, and it's a 5K run, 2-mile walk, and it's a very family-friendly event. There's a Chinese auction, there's drumming, you can buy things from the farm and from the gift shop at the Villa. So everything we raise from the 5K, June 2nd, goes to support our youth programs. And then, of course, we have many different opportunities for adults. Some regular series that folks may be familiar with. We do a monthly labyrinth walk. We do some seasonal land programs. We will also have some week-long retreats, conference retreats with speakers. We have Dermot Quinn coming. We have Sister Maureen Wild coming. We also do directed retreats. We have a week-long directed retreat and a weekend directed retreat. So there's a lot of different varieties and options and possibilities for folks of all ages.
Let's go back to the charism of the Humility of Mary Sisters. We know that that kind of really drives all that they do. So if we could briefly talk about their charism and how that really trickles down into the programs and the services out at the Villa.
Mother Madeline, who founded the community, one of her famous lines that has really anchored the sisters in all of their ministry is that the door to the sisters' home is always open to anybody who wants to come for the glory and honor of God. And so the sisters have always been very happy to open their hearts and their homes. And our mission statement is very broad, saying that we welcome. We embrace all who want to come to the Villa. And so in our programming, you'll see a lot of diversity. In the groups who come and use the facility, you'll see a lot of diversity, and it goes right back to that charism that the sisters have wanted to create a space where all feel welcomed and embraced. And one of the biggest comments we'll get from retreatants is the peace and the sense of healing they'll find at the Villa. And I always tell them that's no accident. It's because of the deep faith of the sisters and them embracing that charism and living it out on a daily basis.
And I think we would like the folks to know that it's not just for Catholics, it's for all people, people of faith, people of different backgrounds, to enjoy the space, the opportunities, and the programs there, correct?
That is correct. We are open to certainly all Christian denominations, but as you said, all religious traditions and denominations, that there is no one who is excluded from coming to Villa Maria.
If someone would like to get in touch with you or someone out at the Villa to get more information, what are some of the opportunities?
Sure. If folks are online or on their phone, our website is a great place to go for a lot of information, and that's www.vm www.vmesc.org. It's the abbreviation for Villa Maria Education Spirituality Center, so it's www.vmesc.org, or they can always call us. We are just on the Pennsylvania side of the line, so the area code is 724-964-8886. 724-964-8886.
And Matt, in closing, tell the folks why you enjoy doing what you do out there at the Villa.
My greatest joy and pleasure is getting to work with and be with the folks. It really is a way that I enjoy partnering with the sisters in their mission and in their charism, welcoming and responding to the needs of all those who come. And it's a great chance for me to live out my baptismal call and then to serve with these wonderful women who've established this great ministry at the Villa.
Matt Abramowski, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here on Wineskins, and our blessings to you and the wonderful Sisters of the Humility of Mary at Villa Maria, Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Father.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. The feast of St. Charles Lwanga and his companions were martyrs from Uganda. To tell us more about these holy men is Alaina Chepke. She is from St. Joseph Church in Austintown.
The martyrdom of these 22 saints from Uganda, Africa, occurred on May 26th and June 3rd, 1886, and January 27th, 1887. Their feast was fixed on June 3rd because on that day the leader of the group, Charles Lwanga, was burned to death after suffering terrible torture. They are the first group from 100 Catholic and Protestants who were murdered by the vicious King Lwanga. They are the first martyrs of Black Africa, and they were canonized during the third session of the Second Vatican Council with the entire Catholic episcopate in attendance. Uganda had been evangelized first by the White Fathers in 1879, but they were expelled in 1882. 2 years later, King Lwanga invited them to return, but later he became a fierce persecutor of the Christian religion. In 1885, he murdered a group of Christians together with their Anglican bishop Hannington under the pretext that they were guilty of espionage. Later in the same year, he had Joseph Mukasa beheaded, together with some of the court pages because they prayed from a book. In 1886, Charles Lwanga and 12 companions were sentenced to death. The youngest was a lad of 13 years. Another was a man who was first converted to the Muslim religion, then to the Protestant, and finally became Catholic. Charles Lwanga has been declared patron of Catholic action and of Black African youth. Within a year after their martyrdom, the number of catechumens rose from 800 to 3,000. In the decree of their canonization in 1864, Pope Paul VI hailed the martyrdom of Anglicans and Catholics in Uganda as strengthening the hope of Christian unity. During his pastoral visit to Africa in 1969, Pope Paul VI celebrated Mass on an altar above the urn containing the relics of the saint. In doing so, he was reviving the tradition of Saint Cyprian, who celebrated Mass over the tomb of the martyrs of Carthage. In fact, the responsory for the Office of Readings is taken from a letter by Saint Cyprian. In his homily, quoted in the Office of Readings, Pope Paul VI stated that these new martyrs of Africa are a page worthy in every way to be added to the annals of the Africa of earlier times, which we, living in this era and being men of little faith, never expected to be repeated. In the prayer over the gifts, there is an allusion to the refusal of the martyrs to accede to the request of the king to commit sins of impurity. The steadfast refusal of the young martyrs is rich in significance for the proper formation of our youth in our day. The prayer after communion states that as the sacraments helped them endure their sufferings, they can also keep steadfast in faith and love. The opening prayer says, "Father, you have made the blood of the martyrs the seed of Christians. May the witness of St. Charles and his companions and their loyalty to Christ in the face of torture inspire countless men and women to live the Christian faith. For Wineskins, I'm Alaina Chepke.
Joining me now is Dr. Dermot Quinn, who is a professor at Seton Hall University, and you recently were here for the First Friday Club. Welcome to Wineskins.
Well, thank you, Father. It's been delightful to be here in Ohio, my first time in Ohio, and I hope not my last.
Well, we certainly hope you come back. Those of us who were born and raised in Ohio love it, except during the wintertime. But now we're in the springtime, and so we certainly appreciate the beautiful weather, and we thank you for coming. Your topic was Irish Catholics in America. I'd like us to kind of set the scene for the folks that are with us. What is kind of the time frame? When did the Irish Catholics actually start coming to America?
Well, actually, Father, the idea that I was trying to suggest to the audience was that there's been a history of Irish Catholicism in America for a very, very long time. In fact, if you wanted to be very, very kind of pedantic about it, you might say that the very first Irishman, the very first Irish Catholic to come to America was St. Brendan. St. Brendan the Navigator, a 6th century monk who left Ireland in 530 or thereabouts. His idea was to try to find the Garden of Eden, and well, he found America, or is rumoured to have found America. So if you would like to think of it that way, there have been Irish Catholics in America for many, many years. But of course, the greater movement of Irish Catholics to America came in the 18th century and then very much in the 19th century. In the 18th century, we certainly do have evidence of a considerable Irish Catholic presence in what was then colonial America, soon to become the United States of America. The one Catholic signatory of the Declaration of Independence was descended from Irish people, Charles Carroll. So there was a kind of relatively small kind of Catholic middle class in the 18th century. But of course, the vast majority of Irish Catholics came in the 19th century. Between 1820 and 1920, there were about 4.5 million Irish people who came to the United States, and the vast majority of those people were Catholics. So we're really talking about a kind of a 19th century migration.
And when they came, were they looking for something? Were they looking, for example, religious freedom? Was that one of the main reasons why they would have come to America, like our forefathers and mothers?
Well, I think in some ways, no is the answer to that question, surprisingly. Certainly those who came in the 18th century were looking for religious freedom, because Ireland in the 18th century suffered from penal legislation. The practice of the faith was simply illegal in Ireland for many years. But in the 19th century, the movement was much more a movement of social and economic necessity, particularly as a result of the Great Famine that took place in the middle of the 19th century. So certainly there might have been some impulse for religious freedom, but I think most historians would say that it was the kind of human disaster of the Great Potato Famine in the middle of the 19th century, which brought people here.
And what's been the impact of Irish Catholic presence here in the United States?
Oh, I think it's been absolutely enormous, absolutely enormous. The Irish were in many ways discriminated against, in fact, in rather terrible ways discriminated against, both economically and socially, and indeed religiously. I think paradox is one of the ironies of this story, is that when Irish people saw that famous sign, "No Irish need apply," they had to apply themselves, and they, so to speak, had to apply to themselves. So they built up a kind of enormous network of self-support, and at the heart of that network of self-support was the church. So Irish people became American by being Catholic. This is, I think, a great paradox, because one of the standard complaints about Irish people and about Catholics is that they were somehow un-American, that they had a loyalty to the Pope, that they were foreign, they refused to fit in, and so on. And the reality is that it was precisely because they were Catholic that they became American. And the story of the 19th century is of Irish people building up the church in America. I mean, most of the bishops were of Irish extraction, or indeed born in Ireland. I mean, the first Archbishop of New York, Archbishop Hughes, was born in Ireland. And so many of the clergy of the 19th century were Irish Catholics, descended from Irish Catholics, or themselves born in Ireland. The story is of an enormous, a simply enormous impact of Irish people on the growth of the American Catholic Church.
Let's talk about how influx of immigrants not just from Ireland, but from other countries, has impacted our country for the better, but some people would say for the worst. How do we stay on that course that it is good for them to be here?
Well, because America, like the church, is a welcoming place. G.K. Chesterton, the great English writer and great English Catholic convert, said that America is a nation with the soul of a church. I think it's a beautiful thing and a beautiful idea to think about. And in that sense, America and the church are, so to speak, fratres unum. They're brothers together. They are welcoming to people of all nationalities. There's nothing more Catholic than the church. There's nothing more universal than the church. So the church has been a church of welcome. And we see that today when the Irish element in the church, in the American church, is still very strong. There's no question about that. I think something like 18% of all American Catholics claim an Irish lineage. But the fact is that the church in America is changing, and it's changing very rapidly, and it's changing very rapidly because of new people coming to America. So I think it's pretty clear that the last survey of American religion, the Pew survey of 2014, indicated that the church is becoming a more Hispanic church. It's becoming a younger church. It's becoming a more kind of southwestern church rather than northeastern church. So in fact, we can see there's a kind of a movement from places like Ohio to New Mexico and California and Arizona and so on. The church is forever self-renewing. It's always new. It's always youthful, spiritually youthful, if not chronologically youthful. And that's because of this wonderful growth of new groups coming to America and coming to the church. So I think we should welcome people, and that is our Christian obligation.
Dr. Dermot Quinn, it's been a pleasure to have you here on Wineskins. I would love to spend more time talking with you. Know that the folks that were at your First Friday Club were indeed fulfilled, and thank you for your presence there. And God bless you in your work at Seton Hall, and we thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Father. It's been delightful. Lovely to be here. I hope to come back.
For Wineskins, I'm Father Jim Korda. To receive more information on that and other issues, and to listen to Wineskins, visit the website of the Catholic Diocese of Youngstown at www.doy.org. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment. After the Catholics of Warren stopped meeting in their homes and organized a structured parish, they used a former Episcopal church for their worship. St. Mary's Mission was established in 1837, yet the first resident pastor did not come to the parish until 1868. Other parishes quickly grew up in Trumbull County, including St. Stephen Niles in 1853, St. Patrick Hubbard in 1869, St. Vincent de Paul Vienna in 1871, now called St. Thomas the Apostle, and St. Rose Gerard in 1892. The other 15 parishes in the county were established after the turn of the 20th century. Congratulations, Catholic Diocese, for celebrating 75 years with pride in the past and faith in the future.
Church World Service believes that being self-reliant is a joy everyone should share. So around the block or around the world, share the joy.
Our song today is by Tim Burke. It is from his CD entitled Love Road.
So bright above the lives of everyone, and comes from God's creative Son. And now that He has let us see, it's up to us to carry on and strengthen those who may hold on along the way. this fight, wrong and right, it's up to us to carry on and strengthen those who may fall along the way. 'Cause you and I have seen it, you and I believe it. We join our hands in unity to pray for those who do not see. You and I believe it, 'cause you and I have seen it. And blessed are those who do not see and still believe. Now that He has let us see, it's up to us to carry on and strengthen those who may fall down along the way. You and I have seen it, you and I believe it. We've joined our hands in unity to pray for those who do not see. You and I believe it, 'cause you and I have seen it. Blessed are those who do not see and still believe. Blessed are those who do not see and still believe.
Our scripture reflections for this feast of the Most Holy Trinity will be by Deacon Mike Kojancic. He is from St. Charles Church in Boardman.
In the Church's liturgical calendar, Sundays sometimes give way to solemnities or feast of the Lord. Not saying that Sundays are unimportant, but this Sunday is one of those special events. Instead of being an ordinary or counted Sunday, it gives way to the celebration of the Most Holy Trinity. But there is an even more important reason that makes this feast different than most. You see, usually feast days remind us of a significant, life-changing event in the history of our faith and church. We read of how it so moved the ancestors of religious heritage that the growing followers of Jesus were then moved in their own lives to live more fully and deeply as a child of God, inspiring them to go out and spread the good news. Last week we read of the coming of the Holy Spirit upon the apostles at Pentecost, and this week we learn that we are challenged to use that same Spirit to go out and live more fully and deeply as a child of God. That same command that Jesus gave to the 11 on the mountaintop is given to us today, to go and make disciples of all nations. And perhaps not surprisingly, we may be like those early disciples that while we gather to worship Him, we also have doubts. Why do we doubt? Maybe because instead of remembering that we are made in the image of God, we have instead made God in our image. Culture and society doesn't help. They have convinced us that we are entitled to be all-powerful individuals of our own universe, thinking that everything and everyone should revolve around us. And that's the problem. There are too many gods in the world, and not enough sons and daughters of the Spirit. We are afraid to go out and let others know that they are not the center around which everything revolves. We may not even believe it of ourselves. But those are not just words given to them centuries ago, and not just words given to us today. It was and is a command. If you think today I'm going to explain the theology of the Trinity so you can understand it completely, well, you're in for a disappointment. If theologians and philosophers, after hundreds of years, are still discussing and trying to understand the Trinity, what chance does this 68-year-old man have? But we are not to understand it completely in this life. That will come later when we abide forever in His presence. But what we are to do here and now is to live the Trinity. We tend to think in human terms of somehow there are three distinct persons in one God, and that concept is difficult at times to get a handle on. And so in the past we've come up with analogies, such as the image of a shamrock, or how I have three persons within me. I'm a father and husband, a deacon, and a neighbor. We must realize, though, that when it comes to the Trinity, these three are in constant unity, making just one presence. The Father creates, the Son teaches, the Spirit encourages and inspires us. All three happen at the same time. They are not separate or categorized. Being a deacon should influence how I am as a father and neighbor, and being a father should influence how I act as a deacon and neighbor, just as being a neighbor influences me being a deacon and a dad. We all want to compartmentalize our lives so that one part of who we are has no bearing on the other parts. That's not the Trinity, and that's not how we are to live our lives. On Monday through Saturday, act as people of the world, and then on Sunday as people of God. The person we are on Sunday should be the same person we are on Monday through Saturday. That's scary, and that's why we have doubts, to have our faith life intermixed so thoroughly with our secular life. But that's the command. But it's more than a command. It's a promise. He is with us always until the end of the age. It's possible to wake up each day and live as His child, not as a child of the world. For you see, we have the greatest help in the world. One God who creates us, who teaches us, and strengthens us constantly. Happy Feast Day. For Wineskins, I'm Deacon Mike Kojancic.
The Feast of the Trinity reminds us that we can never know all there is to know about God. Jesus said, "I have much more to tell you, but you cannot bear it now. When the Spirit comes, He will guide you in all truth." Life with God is an eternal learning experience. Are you willing to keep learning and growing in God? Wineskins is made possible by the annual Bishop's Appeal, the Catholic Communication Campaign, and St. Paul's Catholic Books and Gifts. The program is produced by CTNY, the Catholic Telecommunications Network of Youngstown. I'm your host, Father Jim Korda, wishing you a blessed Sunday and a safe holiday week.